That's always where, where things is going to be. It's really going to be, it's going to be touch and go until, we see that final playoff bracket.
Yeah, I agree with that. For what I looked at, Seabreeze, RPI-wise, I think they're a bit too far out to catch up. So really, it's the final two spots are between three teams with St. Augustine, New Smyrna Beach, and Milton. Of course, we don't know how that may shake up. Like, it could be any of those three filling out those final two spots.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and that's the case. That's just what you're going to find in a lot of these regions. For the 7 to 8 seed in the highest four classes, or 5 and 6 seed in the lowest four, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to fluctuate. Things have fluctuated in a lot of regions. I've seen some regions where a team has gone from being the 2 seed down to the 6 seed. I've seen where they've been the 3 seed and totally out. So anything can happen on any given week. This is why you play the games in the field. The biggest thing is that for every team, and I have to remind this to a lot of coaches, every team on the field, you control what happens in that field. And this is the thing. The biggest thing is go out there and win. Just win your games. If you win, you'll be fine. But it's when you don't win, then that's a whole different story.
Looking at 6A Region 1, what is your overall expectations for the playoffs in the for this bracket?
Well, until Columbia lost those 2 games, I was pretty much thinking, okay, this might be Columbia's region to win. Right now, I think it's a toss-up between Columbia and Escambia. But some people say don't count Lee out, don't count Mainland out. Well, Mainland's had its ups and downs. I mean, if it's a Columbia versus Mainland matchup in the first round, then that's a game that Columbia could easily win. But but if it's Columbia versus Lee, then we got a problem here, because Columbia has struggled in the backyard for a while, going over there and playing games. Period in the backyard. It's just one of those things that it's tough in a way. But right this second, I feel like if it comes down to Escambia and Columbia still, it's just a matter of okay, does Columbia get the right opponent they want in that first round? Otherwise, it could be very tough.
Me personally, I'm actually hoping that we pull Lee in that first round.
If you want that rematch, if you really want it, so there you go.
The reason I feel because when I look at all the potential matchups, that is the one matchup that, from my personal experience, which I'm going to get to in a second, it's the most personal potential matchup in this bracket. And one thing I've noticed in the past is when Columbia gets into a situation where they're going to have to look for a potential payback in a upcoming round, they tend to overlook the current opponent, and that's where Columbia gets knocked out early. If Columbia gets Lee right off the bat, they can get their frustrations and get this monkey off their back right off the bat, and then they can start focusing on going deep and getting themselves to the finals in Daytona.
Right. There's a lot there, and it's just a matter of, again, all of this. It's just a matter of where do we go with it? How do we go forward with it? It's a matter of just making sure you see how you look at all these teams. Every single team. It's every team on this list controls their destiny on what they do in the playoffs. They make the playoffs. Now it's a new season each week. You're either going to be 1-0 at the end of the night, or you're going to be 0-1. If you're 0-1, you're going home. So. But I still think 6A Region 1, it comes down to Escambia, Columbia. Ponte Vedra might have a say. Let's not count Ponte Vedra out. They're good. They're number 2 seed for a reason. They're pretty doggone good.
They are a good team, even though I have a sneaky feeling that if they play St. Augustine again in the first, right off the bat, I would not be surprised if St. Augustine pulls that upset.
Yeah, it would be something that, St. Augustine, again, it's a game that, hey, it would be a high power matchup. It would be one of those matchups again. Both quarterbacks throwing for 350 and 4 touchdowns. That's probably the kind of game they would get.
Well, I know this past week, Ponte Vedra beat them 38-35, so it's not as if St. Augustine can't compete with them. They clearly can. The question is, will the second time be the charm for them if they get that matchup right off the bat?
Right, and that's going to be the big thing. It's a matter of where does it sit at? How do you look at it? How do you get there to it? So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those regions where it's just you're going to have to watch a lot. And looking at your other regions that you want to discuss, it's almost kind of the same thing in a way.
Well, speaking of our other regions, we're going to move on to the next one. 7A Region 1. Edgewater is currently slated to face Navarre, Niceville against Crestview, which is a rivalry matchup and a rematch from earlier in the year. Fleming Island and Lincoln, Winter Springs with Kaiva. Obviously, Winter Springs sticks out for probably all the wrong reasons, but they are a district champ, and that gets them in the playoffs. And then we have Childs and Fletcher sitting just on the outside. I noticed Navarre, they're 6-4, so they're on a bye week this week. I don't know how their winning percentage won't change this week. I guess there are other portions of the RPI can change slightly, but they're pretty much on a wait and see approach, and I guess hoping that they hold out to that 8th spot.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Crestview plays Madison County this week.
That's gonna be a pretty good matchup.
It's an interesting matchup. It'll be a good one. It's a game that Madison County can actually beat Crestview. If that happens, you could be potentially looking at Navarre flipping into that 7 spot and Crestview flipping into 8, or Crestview may be totally out of it. And here's Tallahassee Childs waiting to get in. So I mean, it's very tough. But that 7A Region 1, especially 7A District 1. They have them take 14 speaks for the volumes, the depth of that district, and sure enough, it's played out like that this year. And you know what? One of those teams could turn hot and heavy in the playoffs. I mean, look at Niceville, 10-0. Who expected them to go 10-0 this year? Well, there they are.
Niceville's done a good job, even though I will say, going into the playoffs, I do feel like Edgewater, they're probably the clear favorite at the 1 seed as well in that region. Very good team. I believe they're only.
I mean, you gotta remind people the only loss that Edgewater has had
was Marietta, Georgia.
Right, and that's the big thing is that hey, Marietta's a doggone good team. That's their only loss. Shoot, give me that any day of the week. I'll take the 9-1. I'll take a 9-1 team being the number 1 seed because you know what? Hey, it speaks for their strength of schedule. I mean, Niceville probably could be deserving of a 1 seed too. Don't get me wrong. But, at the end of the day, Edgewater has just gone out and tested themselves a little bit more. Of course, Niceville has to play 6 district games, so they only have room to schedule 4 9-district games. And, by the time you schedule the 9 4-district games, and then including some opponents that you traditionally play, like, in the non-district slate, or have played in the district slate, like Choctaw, you got to go schedule them. You got to make sure they're on the schedule. You got to make sure, a couple of others are on the schedule that you need to play, you're supposed to play. Well, at the end of the day, hey, your schedule's full.
I also would be very intriguing if with Niceville, if they have to go play Edgewater in that regional finals from that deep Panhandle area all the way to Orlando. That's going to be like 6-7 hour bus ride.
Yeah, it's pretty much what that'll be.
That's going to be that's a tough matchup.
It'll be a very long bus ride. I'll tell you that.
Any other thoughts with that region? Obviously, as I mentioned a little bit earlier with Winter Springs against Wekiva, that it's going to be. I'm going to feel like Wekiva is probably going to win that one convincingly, which will set up a pretty good matchup with Edgewater in the second round.
Right.
So it really is it's a pretty good bracket to keep an eye on. A lot of good teams in there.
Yeah, it is a bracket. I mean, one of these brackets, there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of interesting playoff matchups, and I just speak for the entire field from 1A through 8A, there's going to be a lot of great matchups across the board. And especially, some you're going to get some first round doozies where it's not really like, yeah, okay, this is a game we probably didn't want to see. But once you get to the second round, you get to the third round, you get to the state semifinals. Oh yeah, that's you're going to get a lot of very intriguing matchups, and I expect let's talk about the state championships here for a moment. The fact that 1A through 3A is in Tallahassee and 4A through 8A is in Daytona Beach. Let me tell you this right now. Those games, the fact if you can draw 4,000, 5,000 people out on each night, those games are going to feel like electrified games. That's what state championship games should be about.
Yeah, I think everyone was getting tired of being in a 60,000 seat stadium that at best could get 5 to 10,000.
Talking about the monster that feels like you're eating you up. You might have 5,000. You might have 4,000 or 5,000 people sitting there, and it doesn't look like 4,000 or 5,000 people at all.
Another region which over the past has produced a lot of state championships in 6A, 6A Region 4, which I believe that region has won the state title every year since 2012. We got Naples is lined up against Barron Collier currently as a 1 versus 8. Fort Myers versus North Fort Myers, which is a rivalry game at 2 and 7. Dillard and Dunbar at 3 and 6, and Miami Central, who fell from I believe the 2 seed to the 4 seed this past week against Lely. Yeah,
there's a lot going on in that region. It's still anyone's game. Somebody can lose, and South Fort Myers could be back in it, or Barron Collier. I'm kind of wondering what's going on because at first they were doing all right, and all of a sudden they've had a sharp drop off, and they last week they were like 5th seed, and all of a sudden they're the 8th seed. So it's like, all right, what's going on for the Cougars? So it's like okay, what's next? So.
The Miami Central, that may be one of the most intriguing things I'm noticing, especially going late, right into the playoffs, is I don't know if they could have possibly went into the playoffs any colder than they just did after that loss to Chaminade this past week. And even though, yes, Chaminade, very good team, but look at Chaminade's track record of past years against these large school powerhouses. It's not been that good. So for Chaminade to be able to go right in there and beat them by 20 points, that kind of raised a red flag with me regarding Miami Central heading to the playoffs. And now you got a potential second round matchup. They might have to go face undefeated Naples on their turf. And if they somehow get past that, they might be stuck going over to Fort Lauderdale to play Dillard.
Right. Right now, go back and look at Miami Central, losing again, like you mentioned, go back, losing to Chaminade Madonna. But there's some other underlying issues going on that's dealing with Miami Central. Some of it I don't want to get into here, with all that. But, it's Miami Central, they're going to, they're guaranteed a first round game at home, and then they might be on the road for the rest of the playoffs. Think about that, the fact that, hey, they may have to go to Naples. And, some people say, this Naples team is not that good. Naples is so old school, blah, blah, blah. But women said this is the year that Naples finally breaks through and beats Miami Central. That could be a potential chance.
Or Dillard, for that matter. This might be the year they break through.
Even though I don't like Dillard's strength of schedule, that's why I don't move them higher in the rankings. That's why they're not top 25, despite the fact that they're 9-0 record. It's because anything can happen. Again, if a team that wants it, that is the hungriest, that wants it the most, they're going to go out there and they're going to battle and they're going to fight and they're going to go after it to try to get that win. Because they know it's either I'm 1-0 at the end of the night or I'm 0-1 after that. You can either be, hey, we're going on to next week, or we're sitting at home. Or it could be, hey, you know what, we're practicing on Thanksgiving, or we might not be practicing on Thanksgiving. Those are the options that all these teams that make the playoffs are going to be seeing. Am I going to get to practice on Thanksgiving, or am I not going to get to practice on Thanksgiving?
I do remember those days. I think I only got to have that opportunity once in 3 years.
I mean, yeah, it's just, and then looking at some of the other regions, I mean, 8A Region 1, 3A Region 1, 1A Region 3. There's a lot going on in these regions.
Well, I guess we'll go ahead at 8A Region 1, Seminole versus Mandarin right now. Who Mandarin, they pop back after being pretty much up and down this year, well, throughout the